Okay, we're going to do a quick video on what a negative exponent is. Negative exponents are kind of confusing for people, so I'm going to kind of go through them slowly, hopefully. So imagine you have x to the fourth over x to the third. And I asked you to simplify this. The long way of simplifying this would be to write it all out. Make this into one big fraction and say x times x times x times x. There's 4 of them. And x to the third would be x times x times x. There's 3 of them. And if you were going to simplify this, you'd circle all your power of 1s that are going to cancel out. And what's left after getting rid of all of these? X. So your answer would be x, which technically is x to the first power, but we usually just write x. We don't really write the first power. Now there's a shortcut to doing this. And the reason we want a shortcut is, what if I had said I have x to the 100th over x to the 50th? I really do not want to repeat this process and write x times 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 x 100 times. And then on the bottom 50 times x times x times x times x times x. That just seems kind of crazy. So instead of having to do this really big long process, we come up with a shortcut. Look at the powers on the last problem. We had 4 and 3. What's 4 minus 3? 1. So the shortcut is I could have just subtracted these powers and done 4 minus 3. So 100 minus 50 is 50, so I'm going to have x to the 50th power. And that's going to be my answer. So we have this really nice kind of shortcut. Whenever we're dividing fractions, we basically subtract the powers. So if I have x to the 7th over x to the 3rd, then the shortcut would be to say it's x to the 7 minus 3, which is really x to the 4th power. And that would be my answer, which is a really great shortcut, and it works all the time. Here's where the negative powers are going to show up. Imagine I give you something like this. X squared over x to the 4th. If you were going to subtract the powers, it would be x to the 2 minus 4 if we kind of followed this pattern. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So we get this answer of x to the negative 2 power, which really, negative 2 power is kind of a strange power for us to have. It's trying to tell me something. It's telling me that when I solve this problem, x is in the wrong location. And I'll show you what I mean. If I was to solve this the long way, x squared is x times x over x to the 4th is x times x times x times x. There's 4 of them. And what I would end up doing is canceling the ones that match up. And sure, I get 2 x's left over, but they're in the bottom of the fraction. The answer would be 1 over x squared. So that's what the negative power is trying to tell me. I was really supposed to end up with this fraction answer, 1 over x squared. Negative powers are just another way of writing a power that is basically in a fraction. So it's kind of another shortcut we got to know about. If I have x to the negative 3, it's really 1 over x to the 3rd power. And so negative powers are a clue. They're a clue to tell you where to place the x in the fraction. So let's do some examples and kind of work a couple of these out where you have a negative power to deal with. Our first example, let's say we have x to the negative 2 times x to the 5th power. Well, x to the negative 2 is the one that's in the wrong location. It shouldn't have been like this. It was supposed to be in a fraction. So this is really a fraction with x to the 2 on the bottom and x to the 5th on the top. And now I'm ready to simplify. What's this going to be? 5 minus 2 is x to the 3rd power. Answer. So if I told you I had 4a to the negative 3 power, b squared, times 2a to the 5th power, and I asked you to solve this thing, what's this equal? Well, you're multiplying it all out, and I see a negative power. It's this thing. Notice I'm not including the 4. It's just a to the negative 3. That's the only thing in the wrong location. So I'm going to rewrite this fraction, and I'm going to put a to the 3 on the bottom, but everything else stays on top. The 4, the b squared, the times 2a to the 5, all of that stays on top. It's just the a to the 3 that goes to the bottom. So then I can actually clean this up and solve it. 4 times 2 is 8. B squared is b squared. A to the 5th over a to the 3rd. That's what I'm going to need to do some canceling with. A's are going to cancel. 5 minus 3 is 2. There's only going to be 2 a's left. So I'm going to get an answer of 8b squared and then a squared. And I'm going to leave it just like that. Final answer. Negative powers just tell you to switch the location. So another weird thing that could happen is I could give you a parenthesis, and it could be something like 3x to the 4th to the negative 2 power. Now it's telling me the entire parenthesis is in the wrong location. It's to the negative 2 power here. So this was supposed to be 1 over a parenthesis squared. This is what it really means, and so I put the 3x to the 4th down in the bottom. Then I go ahead and solve it, and I use what I know about parentheses. So now I'm going to say that the answer is 1 over 3x to the 4th squared. That means 3x to the 4th times 3x to the 4th. I've got 2 of these parentheses because it was squared. So 3 times 3 is 9. X to the 4th times x to the 4th is x to the 8th. There's 8 x's. So I'm going to get 1 over 3 times 3 is 9, x to the 8th. And that is my answer. 1 over 9, x to the 8th. But I had to move the entire parenthesis down to the bottom first. So negative exponents are really a good thing to review. Try one. Pause the video and give this thing a try and kind of practice. What would 5x squared y to the negative 3 times 2x to the negative 1 y to the 4th be? Like really try pausing the video and do this problem and see if you can get the right answer. Okay, so here's what you do. This thing is to a negative power, and so is x. They're both in the wrong location. So I'm going to rewrite this with a fraction, and I'm going to leave y to the 3rd down in the bottom because it was negative, and x to the 1, like that. Now the rest stays on top. I have a 5x squared, I have a times 2 here, and a y to the 4th. And now I just need to simplify my answer. So let's clean this up a little bit. 5x squared is 5x times x, times 2y to the 4th, so that's y times y times y times y, over y to the 3rd is y times y times y, times x, because it was x to the 1st. So cancel everything out that you can. Let's see, we got some x's here. And then 1, 2, 3 y's, so 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 on top. Which means I canceled everything out of the bottom. There's only things left on top. 5x times 2y. So 5 times 2 is 10, and then xy. So xy. And there's my answer. Now this is kind of the long way here. If you don't want to do this process, then subtract the powers. Look at the y's. There's a 4 and a 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. Look at the x's. 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. 5 times 2 is 10. You can do that in your head and get an answer real fast too. Hopefully that helps with